The first known claim of fairy tale life came from the small English borough of Pepperidge in the late 19th century. A woman named Helen Paisley claimed to have seen a real fairy in her garden on multiple occasions. However, no evidence was ever produced. The following year, a team of foresters found a massive footprint in northern Canada, which reignited the conversation. It was not until 1903 that fairy tale creatures burst onto the scene when a mermaid was caught in fishing nets off the coast of Scotland. While news of these extraordinary events was still spreading between countries, fairy tale creatures of all kinds started appearing around the globe. Professor Hamish Dougal of the University of Derry presented his theory at a 1904 symposium where he proposed that the appearance of these fantastical creatures was due to human belief. That somehow societal belief had reached a tipping point that allowed fairy tale creatures to take actual form. As incredible as the appearance of fairy tale creatures was, humanity quickly took a pragmatic stance. Many questioned the safety of having such beings roam free in polite society, and prominent voices called for heavy regulatory interventions. During the initial trembling clashes between beasts and men, many creatures were imprisoned and presented to the public in caged spectacles. It was not until 3 years later that the emancipation of all fairy tale creatures was signed into law under the Magical Creatures Emancipation Act in Geneva in May of 1906, following heavy lobbying and protesting by activists around the world. Soon, fairy tale creatures were a permanent fixture around the world and a natural part of the hustle and bustle of civilization. Owing to their unique abilities, the fairy tale community quickly found their place in the workforce. Dwarves founded cooperative mining ventures due to their hardiness and keen sight in the dark, not to mention their love of all things mineral. Other professions, such as builder and even taxi driver, beckoned as well. Vampires became a common sight at bars and restaurants due to the nocturnal work hours. And imps and demons were much sought after for building maintenance. The towering giants often helped with construction, but surprisingly also with childcare. Fairies were always a sought-after ingredient at birthday parties. Even the odd titan found work, like Samuel Wells, seen here in Miami working as a lifeguard. The circus also embraced the opportunities afforded by the appearance of fairy tale life, with a fearsome dragon being the natural star of the show. Surprisingly, the orcish community quickly produced a number of large businesses in retail and manufacturing, and across the United Kingdom, unicorn stud farms became a common sight. Indeed, from postmen to teachers and even mechanics, the fairy tale community carved out its place in society with surprising ease. The cultural scene was particularly welcoming to all manner of beasts, and many ogres and elves forged their legacies in the pictures. Lorelei Doth and Sylvan Fenn became the first two elven celebrities, seen here signing autographs for adoring fans on the streets of Hollywood. The ogre Rot Agnar, seen here during an Oscar Award after-party, was cast in 3 different productions as the bloodthirsty villain, much to the audience's delight. The grey elf violinist Venora Lore burst onto the classical music scene in early 1924 with her interpretation of Prokofiev's Violin Concerto No. 1 in D minor. It was even said that during her performance of the third movement, audience members were overcome enough that medical staff had to be called. Hector Orff, seen here enjoying a pint at his favorite watering hole, managed to write 4 bestsellers in his brief career, including the now classic epic, So You Don't Have Wings. Even the starring dragon was invited to the red carpet premiere of the 1921 film Hearts Aflame. It was during these golden years that dragons became a favorite pet of the socialites, which sometimes presented problems of their own as the beasts grew up. As quickly as they blossomed, the fairy tale creatures began to decline. Dragons and trolls, ogres and imps, elves and fairies all turned ill and died. It was speculated that mankind's belief had become so weak that magical life was simply no longer sustainable. There were people glad to see beings they viewed as abominable vanish, but for the most part the sudden dying off was considered a disaster. Try as they might, scientists and doctors were found wanting as they struggled to stave off the landslide back into oblivion. At the funeral of Drak Tomak, the Black Dragon Oracle in Oxford in the fall of 1928, a fist of black dragons flew formation in his honor above the mourners in a spectacular display of solidarity and goodwill. This photograph of the last known unicorn, taken in Czechoslovakia in 1929, shortly before its passing, marks the end of the fairy tale age. Before his untimely end, the Orcish philosopher Grok Brenecki theorized that if humanity was to one day find itself back to a sense of authenticity and wonder, then magical life would return once again. And perhaps he is right. Maybe they are all waiting, just around the corner, for when the time is right to spring back into our lives with a wail and a flick of the tail.